Welcome to Speak of the Devils, the premier podcast for Sun Devil football. I'm Brad Denny with 3TV.
And I'm Joe Healy with DevilsDigest.com.
Joe, we made it. The season is here. Week 1. Sun Devils hosting Wyoming. It's a good time.
The offseason is over. The preseason is over. Any season that you can call it that ain't college football season is over. It's here. Got a little taste last weekend of college football action, but it gets real this Saturday night in Tempe. Devils versus Wyoming. It gets kicked off for 2024. A lot on the line, a lot to talk about. We finally get to preview and break down an actual game of American football. Fired up about that one.
All right, so if you want our season predictions and preview and everything like that, make sure you check out our last episode before Sun Devils kick off this Saturday. A lot of good stuff there. But right now, we are going to preview an actual football game. It's going to be a tough one. The Wyoming Cowboys, a perennial bowl team, they're coming to Tempe to take on Dillingham's Devils, starting up their first year in the as a Big 12 team, second year with Kenny at the helm. And to preview ASU Wyoming, we're going to be joined a little bit later on by the one, the only Ralph Amsden. I hear he's bringing props.
Yeah, it gets a little weird, gets a little interesting, as it always does, but it's always a thrill to welcome our good brother back to the show, a segment we typically call Know Your Enemy, but, throwing that title on out the window. We'll also catch up with our guy Ben Coleman for the latest installment of Unblocked by Ben Coleman. He's going to tell us about how Camp T went for him and the team, what he's looking for against Wyoming, trying to get to 1-0 on the season to start things out.
You'll also be hearing from wide receiver Derek Eusebio, one of the fall camp breakout stars, who's now in line to get some meaningful reps at wide receiver, as well as freshman tight end Jayden Fortier, as he's making his way back from knee injury, and he's participating in practice, and some good things from Jayden later on. But before we dive into all of that good fun, some not so fun things, some news updates on some notable injuries on that front. ASU, of course, was beset by injuries a season ago. Some okay news, I guess. There's always going to be some bruises in coming out of fall camp, but some of these names are a little bit more impactful. Maybe not in quantity as we saw last year, but starting off with Prince Dorba, the defensive end. You went up there to the Camp T scrimmage. You saw him get dinged up a little bit there. He's been out of action since, and the latest timeline given by Kenny Dillingham is a 2 to 4 week absence. Now, thankfully, Elijah O'Neal has stepped up and looked great in practice, but when you lose a player of Dorba's caliber, that's not a good hit.
Yeah, and he's someone that had a real solid season last year. Was and is in line to be a key contributor on defense for the Devils this year. So it's unfortunate that that's not going to get started this weekend, and certainly hope it's closer to that 2 week than that 4 week, so that ASU could be prepared as possible for Big 12 play.
Now moving along to the offensive line, some news there. Sean Na'a is going to be out in a similar 2 to 4 week time frame. He's been dinged up a little bit. Now, he and Cade Briggs had been really battling for that starting right guard job throughout camp, with one of them usually sticking at the right guard spot with the first team offense for a couple days, the other at second team center, and then kind of swapping back and forth up until Sean Na'a's injury. Now, Cade has assumed that right guard job and is in line to start. He's been running with that group for the last few days in practice. But Sean Na'a, obviously a true freshman a season ago, really impressed. And, not often you see true freshman linemen get thrown into action. He performed pretty well and certainly earns the respect of his teammates. But real tough beat to see him going to be missing a chunk of the season.
Yeah, that is unfortunate. They are fairly prepared for that, just with the competition that's been going on in the interior offensive line going back to spring practices. And I think, you're talking about how there were some reactions among the Sun Devil faithful being a little displeased with these injury announcements. I think I would have to have an educated guess that part of that is due to the fact that this sort of information is something that is not freely shared or reported. That's just the policies that are in place. So even though some of these, as you mentioned, have been going on since Camp T, maybe to the fan base, they think that these are all new things that just happened on the doorstep of the season, when there's optimism, which is not necessarily the case. So I think that kind of might, have created some reactions that might be different than what should be the case. But, you get banged up. Everybody gets banged up in fall camp. It's not uncommon for there to be severe season-ending injuries that go on, especially Camp T. You always got to kind of, hold your breath a little bit with the injury situation with what the weather can bring there. So obviously you want a full bill of health, and I know there's still a couple other players that are dinged up that we'll talk about, but it's difficult. It's difficult to make it through, a full off season without some bumps and some bruises.
Now, key linebacker Tate Romney, who saw extensive action a season ago, number of starts. Unfortunately, he broke his arm in practice. He'll be out 4 to 6 weeks now. He'd been running, kind of mixing in with the twos as he was kind of working back for some earlier stuff. So that's a hit to that linebacker depth. Now, of course, they do have that trio of newcomers, as well as Caleb McCullough kind of holding down things there. And, in the base set, just 2 linebackers, but still seeing a guy who can make some plays for that defense like Tate Romney, unfortunate.
Yeah, he was just one of the most pleasant surprises on the team last year. Didn't get much run at BYU before transferring to Arizona State, so it's really unfortunate, for that momentum to be halted. But as you said, the reality of the situation is he was kind of on the outside looking in, even just on the 2 deep. To mention the starting lineup. So it's unfortunate. It's certainly by no means a good thing for him to be out of action, but ASU is certainly prepared to weather that blow, and hopefully he can get back sooner rather than later and just continue to fortify the depth at linebacker.
So a couple other notable names here. Running back Raleek Brown is going to be out for Wyoming, or doubtful, I think is the official, but he should be back here in the next couple weeks. Kenny Dillingham termed his return from injury is about 90%. Now, he's been out for pretty much the entirety of fall camp as he's been working his way back, but as we've talked about, Joe, if there's one area of this team that can maybe afford a guy or two being down, it's running back.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to have too many pieces fall into the injured list, but yeah, to be able to weather the storm of that, they're certainly prepared for that. But I know so many folks are really eager to see Raleek Brown in action, see if he can live up to that 5-star hype that followed him to USC before he came to Arizona State. So, hopefully he's back in action, if it can be next week. Now, obviously, with the time that he missed out of practice, even when he becomes available for game duty, the likelihood of him being thrown, immediately into things full throttle, probably pretty low. So maybe you're hoping that by the time that the Big 12 schedule rolls around that he's up and running and hitting the ground running and doing his thing.
All right, and so finally, offensive tackle Jalen Clem. He's still out for health reasons. He hasn't participated at all in fall camp, was participating in spring, but has really been kind of absent. His time frame is very much kind of still up in the air, but especially in an area like offensive tackle that we've talked about a lot, Joe, in terms of being kind of one of the premier or the bigger question marks on this team heading into the year. That's a guy that this team could use.
Yeah, if last year taught us a lot of things, and one thing that it taught us is that you can never have too many scholarship offensive linemen. You're only a few plays away from being from throwing guys out into action that maybe you didn't expect to do so, pulling red shirts off guys, midway through a flight to Utah, that sort of thing. So to see anyone, even if it's someone that's new to the team, even if it's someone like Clem that hasn't really gotten a lot of run in his college career, you don't like to see that happen. So hopefully, that can be fixed here sooner rather than later. Hopefully he can be in a position to be able to play with this team and add depth at tackle, because as things move on, he's probably going to be a guy that ASU is really going to count on perhaps as soon as next year. So you want to be able to have the 2024 season count for something as well in preparation to that.
So some key names there that are unfortunate, but on the plus side, it seems like there's at least some positive news, an end in sight, and a return to the field for these guys. As of right now, the only season-ending injury is Anthony Cooper, who suffered that injury, a torn ACL in spring. So we will look and track these guys and see when they can get back in the lineup and contribute, because obviously this team's going to need them with a difficult schedule ahead that is beginning this Saturday against Wyoming. But before we dive into that game preview, let's catch up. Head into the trenches with Ben Coleman.
With the 2024 football season about to kick off for the Sun Devils, there's no better way for us to kick that off than bringing back our guy, Ben Coleman, for yet another installment of Unblocked by Ben Coleman. He's going to give us some insight on fall camp expectations for this early part of the season. Just talk about his excitement to get back on the football field. Ben, my man, thank you so much for joining us once again.
No, I appreciate you guys.
All right, man. Fall camp's over.
Yeah.
Season's here. We're days away from kicking this thing off. Let's take a quick look back at fall camp. How would you evaluate camp for yourself, the team? What are some of the biggest things you learned about yourself and the squad as a whole over this last month or so?
I think I'm getting old. I think the young guys remind me, especially the age group. But it was good. Fall camp was hard and in a good way. each and every practice. Coach Dillingham wants us to be, the hardest working team in the country, but having more fun than anybody else in the country. So I think that we definitely nailed that. It was definitely a great balance of hard work and fun. I think for myself, I wanted to be consistent, and I think that's what I was throughout camp. I want to be able to improve, but really more from mental aspect. I think physically, I was able to get comfortable just in spring as far as my, my Achilles and everything. So I think that wasn't really an issue for me. I think it's more about just getting ready to play, just being consistent each and every day. We have other guys on the offensive line that are similar, right? Leave Cade, Emmett, older guys that are being consistent, and then counting on Max to make big strides, and then we have other guys, Josh Atkins, that came along real strong right here at the end. So I think that was really important for us to really just gain, chemistry as far as as offensive line first. I think that's what we really wanted to establish, and then as a unit, as everything kind of got formalized.
So let's talk specifically about Camp T. A few days up there in the Pines, some cool weather. I would imagine some bonding opportunities, maybe some unique stories, memories, things like that. I'm sure you can't share it all, but what were some of the highlights of Camp T for you?
Well, I think last year I wasn't able to go, hike up Mount Kush. And I think that was really cool this year. Everybody on the whole entire team went to the top, obviously besides, maybe a few guys that were injured or something like that. But I think that was pretty cool. We had a big speaker. Justin Wiley is part of, an organization called the athletes.org. And he goes to, different, they host different things. And, he had a giant boom box that, and I think that's the company on it. And so, we talked about it in our cabin, who's going to carry the boom box. And I was like, hey, if I carry it up, somebody got to bring it down. Nobody's like, oh, I'm not going to bring it down. But I guess Scat didn't get that memo. So Scat we heard a loud speaker coming down the hill. And of course, Scat had it. So I think that made it, it was different. Some guys wanted it quiet. Some guys wanted it loud. But I think it was definitely for the experience. So Scat carried that boom box. It had a strap, a crossbody strap. So he just carried it on his back all the way up the hill, all the way down. And on the way down, it was rough. It was rough for a couple of guys. A couple of guys might want to tell you guys, they show out. They had no problem. Joe McGinnis can definitely tell you that there was a couple slips and slides. The thing is just fall gracefully. I learned. I heard that Joel Embiid and his doctor said, hey, when you fall, instead of stopping yourself, just fall. Because everybody complains about Joel Embiid's always on the ground. So, I just thought about Joel Embiid and that doctor. Anytime I took a fall, I just didn't try to stop it, didn't try to do too much, just fell right on down. So he definitely had a few slides, but everybody came out healthy, so that's most important.
All right, so just a couple days away from the season opener, and while you, Leaf, and Max have really been the consistent factors throughout camp along that line, looks like we've now finalized with Cade at right guard, and to your left, Josh Atkins. How do you feel the overall chemistry level of the O-line is coming along?
I think it's great. I think that the lineup has been great. I think Josh and I work well together, and I work well together with other guys as well, such as Emmett, because he'll be getting a lot of playing time as well. I think Leaf and I just more about just rebounding kind of off the spring. The spring was the first time we was able to work with each other, and in spring a lot of lineups changed, right? Coach T want to make sure that we're working with different guys. So I think primarily I was with Leaf, the whole camp. And I think that was really important. And then just rotating tackles, seeing which ones, work best to start off this first game and this first lineup. I think that was really important. I'm excited to see the guys, below me take strides. I think Kyle Scott, and everybody would also agree, took some really good strides. Don't be surprised if you see him in the game getting, some key playing time. So that's really important. I'm proud of Kyle, a SoCal guy. We grew up really close and never knew each other, but, grew up really close. And, of course, he's like Max. He was a late bloomer as far as football. Didn't start till late, a JUCO guy just like Max. So I think it's really cool nowadays to see those JUCO guys thrive. So I think it's really important because in the age of, we talked about the transfer portal and everything. So I think it's really cool to see those guys, make it to this level and then also make an immediate impact.
So, of course, the big storyline of fall camp was the quarterback battle. Sam Levitt, QB1, heading into this season. So, now that you've had, fall camp to get to know him a little bit, and what kind of things jump out about him, his leadership style, and the way he commands a huddle?
I think he's excited, and I've seen it since the news has came out that, I feel like he's kind of, he's still hard on himself, right? Because as a quarterback, you need to be. But he shows up every day. He's happy. He's excited. And it's not that he wasn't during the the duration of fall camp, but I think it was more about when you're in the midst of that QB battle, it's really about, hey, it's me versus these guys. I got to make things happen. But he's always been a smiley guy, right? Big bright smile. So I think we're really excited to have him as our quarterback, and especially having a young guy. I think it's true big brother, little brother system now, right? You have all these older guys on the offensive line protecting you. You have an older running back next to you, right? Whether it be Alto, whether it be Cam, whether it be Delos. You have some older wide receivers. When you think about Malik, we think about Troy, Melquan, right? So everybody surrounding him is older than him. Even JT. So when you put those things together, and maybe I missed, but they may be the same age, but even speaking from experience, JT had a lot of playing time that freshman year. So when you think about that, I think it's going to be really beneficial because we've all played in games, we've all played in big time games, we've all made big time mistakes in those big time games. But then it's important because we'll have his back, and we'll support him. But I think he's a ball of fun, and like I said, I love his confidence. He has a little arrogance to him, and I love it. And I think I can't wait for him to do great. I can't for him to make some young guy mistakes because we're going to be right behind him to pick it up.
All right, man. So step into our shoes for this next question. Get like your analysis hat going on. So who are some players? It could be offense, defense, special teams, anybody who surprised you during fall camp. Who jumped out? Maybe that what you see from them now, what you expect from them for the season at this point is maybe a little different from what you would have said maybe a month ago.
Well, I think if we start with special teams, you talk about Samp. That's what we call him, Zechariah Sample. He's a fast guy. Everybody knows that. But I think it's really important. I love to see him, make some strides. Me being on the punt team, Kenyon Floyd is right behind me, freshman punter. Talked to him in the ice bath earlier. Just a true freshman nervousness. But I told him, I said, hey, you're prepared for the moment. You've earned it. And so I think from special teams wise, that's what I would say. From offensive, of course, everybody talks about Derek Eusebio. Everybody talks about Derek. He's playing that slot wide receiver. He's not the biggest, for sure not the biggest. He's not the fastest, for sure not the fastest. But he's detailed. And, I love to see him, make big-time plays. He caught some big-time balls, whether that be in Camp T or, especially from I remember in the bubble, big-time deep balls. And I don't even see he get to 7-on-7, right? And as far as I hear from 7-on-7, he does great. So I love to see that, right? Young guys, walk-on guys, making big-time plays. I think that was really important. And I think from defensively, I think I'm really just proud of the D-line. I had no problem telling them that Coach Reynolds has helped him make big strides to the D-line. I told them all to their face. It said spring. I didn't feel like pass rush. You guys really had a plan. I feel like it was very easy. I've seen the transition and the impact that Coach Reynolds has had on each and every one of them. Me and Jeff Clark go head-to-head all the time, and I think that's a good thing because I didn't always have that, especially from a pass rush perspective. But I love that pass rush, it can be Jeff, and in the run game I can go with Jacob and CJ. And then they'll move Justin Watley down there to play, 3 technique, or he loves to get in a wide 4-eye. But I think it's really important for those guys. I think I'm really more proud of the D-line because that's what I've seen most. And I think another guy, linebacker, Jordan Crook. Me and Jordan Crook, of course, good friends as since he's made the transfer over here. I love to see him grow. He's a fast guy. He's a smart guy. Coach Dillon has said this is a team that really wants to win. I think it's full of a team full of a lot of underdogs. Whether everybody be their story is, whether they were ruled ineligible, injury, whether they just didn't play at another school because simply that school, clearly said that they weren't good enough. So I think, if I would say those guys on special teams, Samp, Kenyon Floyd, defensively, I would definitely say the defensive line because I love the strides that they've made, making us better, iron does sharpen iron. And then, as far as offensively, I love to see Derek, run around, make plays.
All right, the Cowboys are coming to town here in just a couple days. Always a very tough, gritty bunch. Now, through your preparation and film study, what kind of jumps out about what this Wyoming Cowboy defense likes to do schematically?
I think, they're disciplined. And I think that's important for a defense. When I played at Cal, it was a lot of things. And a lot of those guys agreed when we played at Cal. It's just, hey, they're very disciplined, right? They're coached well. I think that's also another thing that's very important. Coaching is everything because, when you talk about schemes, everything looks good. But if it's not coached right, it doesn't make a difference. And then I think it goes to the personnel, right? The players you have. So you have the scheme, you have the coaches. Now you talk about the players. And the players just like I said, just blue-collar guys. Obviously, going to Wyoming, they're going to be under-recruited compared to, right, most likely no Power 5 offers. Go to Wyoming, with a point to prove. They keep everything in front of them. They don't make mistakes. And, they were really big on the turnover battle last year. So I think it's up to our defense to force turnovers. And I think it's for us to protect the ball at all costs.
So with each passing day, we get closer and closer to game day. Of course, your first opportunity to step on the field in live action for the Sun Devils. So give us some insight. Tell our listeners and our viewers about what a game day's like for you from the moment you wake up to the time the ball's kicked off for that game? What are you doing throughout the course of that day?
Well, in the mornings, obviously I see the schedule that we have now. I've never experienced it, obviously being at ASU yet, but primarily every single road night game is the same or home night game is the same. So based off our schedule, wake up in the morning, the first thing you do is get breakfast, right? Most important meal of the day, fuel. And then we go to a walkthrough, light walkthrough, any adjustments, just a couple different things. And there's a big gap of just downtime. And I think that's a lot of times I just like to watch football, right? I'm sure a lot of other guys would agree, but so I watch other games. I watch other offensive line. What are they doing? What are they doing right? What are they doing wrong? Right? Just some last minute adjustments, of course. Some late film. So those are usually combined, right? Pull out the iPad, watch a little bit of film as it goes to commercial, and the games go back on. Just enjoy it, right? Just like any other Saturday. I know a lot of times they think that we're locked in a box, super laser focused, and I think that's important. But I think that comes with preparation. When you're prepared, on Saturday comes, you can be really relaxed. And then as the game approaches, you kind of feel it. You feel it. So I think for me, it's about being more relaxed. I'm an older guy. Some people are juiced, absolutely juiced. They're off the wall. Some people do energy drinks. I think for me, I'm more of a calm guy. It's kind of how I play. Of course, I want my play on the field to be aggressive and physical, but I think I try to keep a flat line, right? Just stay the same throughout the whole game because the offensive line is very much up and down. You win reps, you lose reps. But you just got to go the next play and do our job. And I know we're a very important piece of our offense. We look forward to running the ball. So I think for the most part, it's just a lot of downtime, a lot of chill time, and watch a lot of college football, just like everybody else.
All right, so looking ahead to the big matchup against Wyoming on Saturday, you mentioned earlier limiting turnover is going to be an important key. What are some of the other benchmarks of success for you, the offensive line, the offense as a whole, in order to get that W to open the season?
Well, I think we have a new offensive line technically, right? When you talk about it, these are all guys that have been at Arizona State. Obviously besides Josh Atkins. But I think that everybody has not worked together. We have not seen ASU's best offensive line, of course, since Coach Dillingham has been here. So we're excited. I think, most importantly, we want to establish the run game first. And I think that's any offensive line, right? Everybody talks about run the damn ball, but that's really a real thing, really to run the damn ball because that opens up every single, facet of the game. Besides that, it can be play action pass, it can be deep pass. When you establish that run, it really takes the heart out of the defense. So I think that's something that, we want to pride ourselves on and lean on throughout the season goes because, anytime you can't defend the run, it becomes, just a huge problem, right? Defensively, because it doesn't matter, right? You can run any blitzes, any pressures in the runs. But we feel really confident, and that's something we really want to do because an offensive line, there's nothing better than run the ball all day long, and then dropping back, hitting a deep pass, play action right over the middle.
And Ben, we know you've got some outstanding NIL partnerships going on. Tell our viewers and listeners what you've got going on in that regard.
Well, I guess first thing is Mac Daddy. Mac Daddy, they sell, chicken wings and mac and cheese. My favorite place. I guess I'm lucky to have the NIL deal. If it wasn't an NIL deal, I would still go there. We're going to do some specials regarding, my number 62. So stay tuned for those, of course, whether that be, a certain amount of wings and fries for $6.22 or 6 wings and 2 sides. We definitely have some things in the works, but, definitely shout out to Mac Daddy. Preston is the owner there, and ASAP IVs is going to be really important, right? Getting the IV before the game. It says that, the high is going to be 100, and I think that's blessed. And, people would probably think we're crazy, but when it's a high of 100, even this morning, it felt pretty great. It was probably 90 degrees, but a little bit of overcast. And so ASAP IV is another place, Sun Devil alum as well, working there. So I think it's really important to one, hydrate myself, especially with the IV, with throughout the length of the game. I think it'll be really important and beneficial those two places. So, of course, fuel up with, of course, on Saturday with Mac Daddy. And then, of course, I got to get the IV. It's important.
There you go. All right, man. Saturday night, it gets started. We're going to be keeping an eye on you, and all Sun Devil fans will be looking for 62 to be leading the way, leading the charge, opening some gaping holes for the running backs and quarterbacks to run through and get a big Sun Devil victory. Once again, thank you for joining us here for this edition of Unblocked by Ben Coleman. We will certainly be catching up with you down the road.
Go Devils.
With Arizona State hosting the Wyoming Cowboys, our next guest was an absolute essential. We knew it as soon as the non-con ink was dry. Ralph Amsden, great friend of the program. Great shirt choice, by the way, coming on to the show. Thanks for coming on tonight. And I know it's probably a house divided situation for you.
Yeah, a little bit. My mom went to University of Wyoming. I had a bunch of uncles go to University of Wyoming. A lot of friends. I even went there as a toddler. My mom would take me to classes with her. That is actually my student ID right up there, just above my head, with me in overalls and snot running down my face. So I got a long history with Laramie, Wyoming, but it's all Sun Devils this week, baby.
And yeah, because we usually call this segment "Know Your Enemy." And we joke about with other guests that we have, longtime guests, the Patrick Kinahans of the world or others like that we got to throw that aside. But we really got to throw that aside when the guy, I don't know if y'all watching this can tell, but the T-shirt that Ralph has on is one of our shirts. So, I mean, that's the good graces of all good graces.
Product, first run.
A vintage one as well. Yes, now that we are a teenager as of a couple days ago. So, Ralph, let's start talking. Some cool stuff going on in your life before we talk about football and games of that sport. Catch us up, chat us up, tell the good folks what you got going on in the world right now these days.
Well, I got my kids a pair of Yeezys at an extreme discount.
Outstanding.
For some reason they're selling them a lot cheaper than they used to. What else is going on in my life? I'm doing a podcast, bringing back an ASU solo show as part of the 1012 podcast network. I'll be talking to myself about Arizona State University after they win or lose on various weekend dates. So look for that to be coming. First episode should be dropping this week. And doing a little bit of writing over at Sports 360 AZ as well as Arizona Varsity. Put about 2,000 words out this week about some of the concerns and questions I have about putting the keys in Sam Levitt's hands. And that's not a slight on him, just kind of talking about what I expect out of this fan base to give him time and patience that has not been afforded to a lot of other people in this situation, as well as just pointing out some of the very, very obvious facts that there's about 10 players on this offense that were playing college football when Sam Levitt was still in middle school. Are they going to follow his leadership? I think that's a really important question. So you can check that out this week on sports360az.com.
All right, now let's look ahead to Saturday and a team that you know pretty well that you've been following for quite some time. Of course, Craig Bohl has had a pretty successful tenure at Wyoming. He's now stepped aside. Jay Sawvel's taken over the reins there for the Cowboys. What kind of changes or impact do you think to the Wyoming identity, the successful Wyoming identity, do you think that we could see under the new coach?
None. I don't even know if it's possible to change Wyoming's identity. I know that Marcus Arroyo was out talking to people today about the fact that Arizona State's offensive coordinator used to be Wyoming's offensive coordinator under head coach Dave Christensen. I know how much Arizona State fans love Coach Christensen. He was our head coach there for a minute, and the reason that he was named head coach of Wyoming was they wanted to revamp that offense. Dave Christensen was offensive coordinator at Missouri and was one of the first schools to run the spread, along with Rich Rod out there at West Virginia. So Wyoming wanted a piece of that, and they brought him and Marcus Arroyo in to revamp that offense, and it didn't really revamp. It looked a lot like what they do now. Their identity is really the power I. And bringing in Craig Bohl and that North Dakota State defense that they developed out there, which Arizona State runs as well, was really nice because nobody was trying to put lipstick on a pig. They were just happy playing in the mud. So for the last 10 years, it's probably been the best streak of football in Wyoming history, and including having probably about a dozen really, really high level players in the NFL, from your Marcus Epps and your Andrew Wingards and your Josh Allens, Brian Hill. They've had a lot of success in getting guys to the league. Logan Wilson is a Pro Bowler right now. So, it's been a really, really fun time to follow Wyoming football, even though not a single thing they've ever done has looked like or been any fun.
So with the transition to the new head coach, how seamless do you think the transition will be, or do you think it'll be a rocky one? What do you think Sawvel's likelihood of being able to maintain that consistent success that Bohl had? How likely do you think that is?
Well, the steady hand of Craig Bohl. Craig Bohl is from those like Nebraska national championship teams. Like, he's never too high, never too low. I'm sure there's going to be some type of adjustment. It's a different personality, but I mean, they made sure that as many people as possible stayed in place in the building. Jay Salvell moved up to head coach. Well, Craig Bohl's son took over the defense. Maybe the biggest change is going to be the fact that Jay Johnson was hired to be the offensive coordinator, and he's been out at Michigan State the last few years. He was actually Sam Levitt's coach last year. So that adds another interesting wrinkle to this game on Saturday.
All right, talking about the offense for the Cowboys, Mesa native Evan Svoboda is slated to get the start at quarterback. He got one start a season ago. There's been some comparisons I've read that he's got about a similar build, kind of a dual threat ability. Wears the same numbers as a former Wyoming gunslinger. But what does Evan bring to the field for leading this Cowboy offense?
This reminds me of when we used to, like, every single time a shooting guard from North Carolina got drafted, like, it's the next Michael Jordan. And looking back, it's like, oh, we were talking about Jerry Stackhouse and Rashad McCants, and maybe we should have calmed down about that. Evan Svoboda is a big quarterback with a big arm. He is not Josh Allen. There are not a lot of people who have that level of athleticism. He was at Red Mountain. He was kind of still learning himself at that time. And the fact that he went the JUCO route and he's the same size and wears the same number, all of that is merely coincidental. If you had a chance to see Evan Svoboda play last year, he's not somebody who is going to take off and run and throw the ball 65 yards down the field to the opposite sideline while running out of bounds and trucking three of your linebackers. What's going to happen with Evan Svoboda is if you manage to jostle him out of the pocket, he's going to fall forward for like 3 yards, and he's going to make sure that the offense isn't put in too many precarious situations. That's really good for Wyoming. It's possibly even better for Wyoming than having somebody who is out there being a gunslinger, because that doesn't necessarily always fit with their style of play. And if you go and look up Josh Allen's college statistics, it would not surprise me if Evan Svoboda's mirrored his, but that it's just night and day when it comes to the actual skill sets that would translate to the next level. That doesn't make him less dangerous, though, because if he plays within the game plan, then you're not going to have those Josh Allen games against an Oregon or a Nebraska when he went out there and threw 5 interceptions.
Now, he'll be without the services of a star running back, Harrison Whaley, injured and going to be out for the first little bit of the season. So, what's kind of the workhorse and not in the lineup for the Cowboys, what kind of game plan are you expecting to see Saturday?
Well, really, they try to get a push up front, and with 4 returning starters on the offensive line, they usually can get that. They're pretty confident in being able to get some push right at the line of scrimmage, and then it's just a lot of no nonsense running, and it's kind of plug and play. Harrison Whaley is a special player, and I was excited for him, but he very much resembles a lot of those prior Wyoming running backs like X Valaday, that as soon as you give them a little bit of daylight, they're going to make a cut that doesn't even look like a cut. They're just heading to where they can get the most yards. They don't care about breaking it for 65 yards. They care about making sure they get 9, 11, 15, even no matter how big that hole is, they'll run at a defender, despite, maybe instead of trying to be escapable or something like that. It's just all about positive yardage all the time. Everyone who's going to fill in for Harrison Whaley in this game, they know the game plan. They're not slouches. I mean, they got a North Carolina transfer back there as well. So Harrison Whaley is definitely their best player on offense, though. He will be missed. He's harder to bring down once he is in the open field, but they're still going to get that push, and I don't expect a lot of dancing. And so it's just a matter of how much you can disrupt them at the line of scrimmage and keep some of those 6-yard runs on first down, maybe to 2 or 3.
So tight end John Michael Gillenborg had some good success there, and good yards per catch average a season ago, and looks to be poised for a bigger role this year. But some question marks at wide receiver. Who are going to be some of the key targets for Evan Svoboda on Saturday?
I guess just anybody in Brown. It's not a talented group. This is not like even spending time on this is a little bit funny to me. I think their leading returning receiver is like from my hometown, and you notice the disdain I say that with. There's not like any NFL players have come out of Sheridan, Wyoming, and I think he's from like a 250 person suburb. So it's not a talented group. If you pair them up against a defensive back that's 5'7", 5'8", They're going to find a way to try to cause matchup problems and do a lot of possession receiver type stuff. The play action thing can really be killer, and I think that's why they have so much success going to tight ends in the last few years. But this offense, I mean, the idea that someone would even get the ball enough in this game for you to learn anything more than their number, like to learn their last name, that would be pretty worrisome for ASU. I expect maybe 14, 15 completions on the day. So, I wouldn't worry too much about these receivers. If you play disciplined football, then you shouldn't be hearing their names much anyway.
So not to belabor the point too terribly much, but between the injury to Whaley and a lot of graduations across the skill positions, there's some concerns there, certainly on offense for Wyoming. What should ASU do to exploit those, potential concerns for the Cowboys?
Well, up until today, I thought that they were going to start a converted redshirt freshman tight end at right tackle, and to me that was like attack that. Right? Like just look for any weakness there. Look, Wyoming's got a weight room too. This is their first game of the season. This is the freshest they're going to be. And their whole plan is to attack the line of scrimmage. And so, Brian Ward is very familiar with what Wyoming is going to try to do here. And if you have the ability to get them in a couple of 3rd and 5 situations where they can't just pound the rock, then you're going to get some possessions back because, the maybe on a good day, 50% success rate on some of those little short passes. So, I think it's just a matter of good eye discipline. Don't fall for the play action. So all of a sudden you give up a 65-yard touchdown to a team full of kids who run 4.8 40s. Don't do that. Right. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I have just watched this team my entire life. And the only time that the dam ever breaks offensively is if they're at 7,200 feet, which they're not going to be in this game, and you get into that fourth quarter and they just are remaining with that physical running game. There's not really a lot of 300-yard passing games to be seen. They'll try a big play here and there, but for the most part, this is a ball that the reason their defense is so successful is because they're not on the field any more than they have to be. This offense is really just trying to, for lack of a better term, play herm ball out there.
Now switching over to this Cowboy defense, as you mentioned earlier, new defensive coordinator Aaron Bull, Craig's son. What should we expect to see from a schematic standpoint from a Cowboy defense that returns a number of starters?
They'll blitz. I mean, and they're going to have to test the fence, Jurassic Park style on an offensive line, which, Brad, you and I have had conversations. They haven't proven themselves as pass blockers yet. I think they're underrated run blockers. I was looking at it the other day. If you take the 235 carries from their top 3 running backs last year, they averaged 4.89 yards a carry. That's not elite, but it's pretty darn good, right? So Arizona State is going to want to establish the run against this defense. What I worry about is this matchup has happened before, not Arizona State and Wyoming with, Kenny Dillingham versus Jay Sawvell, but Marcus Arroyo in his first game at UNLV, Wyoming came to town. And Jay Sawvell was the defensive coordinator, and Arroyo spent the whole game trying to establish the run. And Arizona State's talent level is a lot higher than UNLV's was in 2020, so don't think I'm trying to compare those two teams. But I did watch Marcus Arroyo try to go to work on this defense, and Wyoming had him down 38-7 going into the fourth quarter, and Arroyo was still out there trying to establish the run. And I think it finished probably at a 60-40. And so I think that my assumption is that Arroyo saw something he thought was going to work and just didn't have the personnel to execute it. I look at it this time, and Arroyo's probably got to be licking his chops because he knows this offensive line can get a little bit of a push. He knows he's got 2 or 3 really dependable running backs that can give Wyoming possibly a taste of its own medicine. And then the real way to exploit this defense, and Wyoming is very talented, especially on the interior of the defensive line. I think between their 2 tackles, you're looking at 110 combined tackles last year. And then they have 2 returning safeties who are pretty highly regarded. So they're going to try to muck things up and really attack you in the running game. If you can get stuff out to players like Jake Smith and Jordan Tyson on slants and screens, let them beat their man. Let the Wyoming defensive backs have to make tackles over and over and over again until you break something. Now, I know Kenny Dillingham's going to want to dial up a deep shot or two, but you can't live on that, right? It's an added bonus if you can knock one or two of those out a game. But really what Arizona State's going to have to do is make those Wyoming defensive backs show that they can hang with some former 4-star athletes. And over the course of a game, I just don't think they're going to be able to do that.
So if you're Marcus Arroyo, Kenny Dillingham, how are you coaching Sam Leavitt for his first collegiate start and how he should prepare for the Cowboys?
I had a message from a former Arizona State quarterback's dad yesterday, and he told me one thing nobody's talking about when it comes to Sam Leavitt is they're going to be in his helmet. And I had forgotten all about that they're actually going to have the ability to communicate with him using the helmet microphone technology that is available to all NCAA teams this year. And so that is going to be, I think, a really, really big help to be able to talk him through some things and just the emotions of going out there in your first big start. I don't expect things to look pretty for Sam Leavitt tomorrow. And a big reason for that is, it's recent college football history. University of Wyoming has allowed 2 300-yard passers total in the last 2 seasons, one a season. You know how many times they held an opponent below 200 yards passing? 12. When they played in Austin last year, Texas had 131 yards passing. This is not, you shouldn't go out and expect to look like Dan Marino on day one. So they need to manage his emotions because you can't expect him to manage his expectations. He's going out there to win. So it's going to get ugly because it's Wyoming. Everything that they are doing is about creating uncomfortable situations, creating chaos. They just want to see if you can swim in the deep end. That's what's important to them. And if Sam Leavitt can avoid that rush of emotion that comes with a couple of things not going well, somebody doesn't flatten their route out correctly, a running back tries to pull the ball out when you're trying to pull it back on an option read, if he can weather some of that stuff and just realize that all that matters is you got to go out and win the game. If he can handle that, and Marcus Arroyo can be a calming presence in his ear throughout the game, I think he'll be fine. I don't think it's fair for anybody to expect this to look pretty tomorrow or this week.
So who are some X factor players for the Cowboys that you think we should watch out for?
John Hoyland. Do you guys know who that is?
The kicker?
It is. It's the freaking kicker. He had a really, really good year in 2022. Fell off a little bit last year. I think he was 13 for 20, but I think he was a Groza finalist. They're going to put him in positions where he has an opportunity to score points. And in what I believe will be a low-scoring game, that could matter a whole lot. And so that sounds insane to say that, but if you're an Arizona State fan and somebody had you on their podcast and you're giving your expert opinion, and they say, who should we watch out for? It wouldn't have been insane to say Zane Gonzalez there for a 4-year stretch, right? So, John Hoyland he's that guy for them. And they have a returning defensive tackle who's got some dad strength, not much to look at. I think his last name is Bertagnoli, and he's a menace. 60 tackles last year. The fact that they got him back this year, and a team like ASU or USC didn't go buy him up, which is what happens anytime you get good at Wyoming. Some team from the Southwest comes and gets you out of those harsh winters.
I mean, one of the backups went to USC, right? That Meyer.
Yeah, and Solomon Byrd last year, who got drafted in I believe by the Jaguars in a late round. He was USC via Wyoming. Every year they lose a couple of players. I always thought that was going to deplete Wyoming and create a minor league system and make them less competitive. But what's been interesting is it's actually served as almost an incentive program, and you're seeing players just play out of their minds. And then Wyoming does have enough generous benefactors, old ranch money and whatnot, where they can afford to keep one or two players in the fold each year. And a lot of those guys end up being linebackers, and every single year they've got a good one. And this year, it's no different. Whether it was Logan Wilson or Chad Muma, they're always going to get production out of a very, very disciplined middle linebacker, and I don't see this team being any different. But as far as just people to look out for, I lead with the kicker because that this is kind of an anonymous team. Even the 4 offensive linemen they have coming back, it's not like any of them are highly touted. They're just very experienced. And developed well, and the same goes for the 2 returning safeties. Not necessarily world beaters or getting NFL draft grades, but they're back, and they had a good year last year. So I wouldn't expect too many superstar performances. It's just the collective hammer that they bring. And if they get their kicker in an opportunity to, look at what Georgia Tech did to Florida State last week, they get themselves in a position to bleed out a 7-minute drive to end the game, and you're tied, then that's the name you're going to remember is John Hoyland. So you want to try to keep that guy off the field.
So last year, Wyoming had a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde thing going on, 7-0 at home, 1-4 in true road games. Is that just the atmosphere, the environment, the elevation, or scheduling fairly at home? What is that sort of thing, and how does that influence this trip they're making to Tempe?
Joe, you are one of the most in shape people I know, and I'm sure a time or two you found yourself in Flagstaff, and you had to climb 1 flight of stairs.
I was just there this weekend.
Yeah, and I'm sure when you got to the top of the stairs, you were like, I work out every day. What the hell is going on?
Precisely.
Yeah, okay, so multiply that elevation times 2, and that is their home field advantage. If you bring a passing offense into Laramie, you got to understand there's 65 mile an hour wind gusts at 7,200 feet. The air is thin, and it's running away from you at the same time. So it is an enormously unique home field advantage. And then the personality of the team is just that, they're just not scared to lose a fight at all. They just want to fight. If they win, cool. If they lose, cool. They're going to fight you. So if you go up into that environment and you're thinking about catching your next breath instead of the next play, they'll get you. On the road, they don't necessarily have that advantage, but they are in a lot of very close contests on the road. They took Texas to the 4th quarter, tied in Austin last year with their backup quarterback. It is a situation where they're tough. They're just tough, and that's their whole identity. They're not the best athletes in the world. They only very recently started landing 3-star prospects. They were doing this all with 2 stars and ranch kids for the longest time. The transfer portal has given them an opportunity to get maybe a little bit more athletic, but their recruiting areas are really Colorado, some kids in California that fall through 80 different cracks, and then outside Chicago. And
Svoboda is the only Arizona guy on the roster, and I would have thought that they might have had more. That kind of surprised me when I was looking.
No, and I mean, you can go back about 8 years and you won't find any really on the roster. And for the longest time, they were the only Mountain West team that didn't have an Arizona representative. It's a tough sell. It's a really, really tough sell. And so they know what works for them. There's California kids who are kind of on their last chance, Illinois kids who are kind of on their last chance, and then, big ranch kids who are in Nebraska, Wyoming, and northern Colorado that all plan on being in the same place for 5 years and developing. And sometimes it works. Like I said, they got a weight room too. So it's just been a really awesome culture, and it used to be once every 3-4 years they'd get a bowl, and that would be the highlight of a 4-year period for me. And now, in the Craig Bowl era, I think he went to like 7 and 10 years, and I'm bummed that he's gone for them. But this level of consistency, it drives Wyoming fans nuts because I think they spend the second most amount of money of anybody in the Mountain West to go 7 and 6 every year. but you just have to understand it's such a tough environment to recruit kids to. It's literally near nothing. And they have to compete against Fort Collins, which is this gorgeous town just across the border in northern Colorado, and that, you know, they can't sell that environment to the kids that they're recruiting. It is a good time though. It's a good place to go be a literal and figurative cowboy. And I wish this was a home and home so ASU fans could go experience what I got to see plenty of in my life. But I also think the smartest thing ASU ever did was not schedule a game in Laramie.
So obviously a first-year head coach for the Cowboys taking over after a guy who did some pretty good things. And on the flip side, Kenny Dillingham looking to rebound in year two, and the first year as a Big 12 team. How much do both of these teams need this Saturday's game in order to help set a course for their seasons?
I don't think it's terribly necessary for either team. You know, we were talking before we started recording, you know, is it a house divided situation? Not necessarily for me, because Wyoming is chasing a bowl. Arizona State, I think, is really chasing double-digit wins. I think that's what's on Kenny Dillingham's mind every single day. I believe that the fan base, donor base, administrators, everybody involved is more than willing to give Kenny Dillingham the longest leash in the world. I think that they looked at Jed Fish's 3-year build as the model. They want some excitement this year, and next year they really want to compete. I think the only person in the world that disagrees with that is Kenny Dillingham. I think he's chasing 10 wins now. I think he looks at the fact that they're about 22 points away from being 7-5 last year, and he's thinking, why not us? So it's definitely more important for Arizona State than it is for Wyoming, but I don't think you're going to get an accurate judgment of who this ASU team is until they're through the following 3 weeks, going up against 3 defenses that 4 times each, all 3 defenses, Texas State, Texas Tech, they all gave up 275 passing yards or more 4 different times. It's going to be a completely different experience. So you're actually going to get to see the offense function in the following 3 weeks. This is just a fight to survive, and it's happening in week 1, and it, you know, that part's not fun. So I'd hope ASU fans would just come in with the expectation that, you know, even if it's 10-9, if you get out of there with a win against this team, it might as well have been 1,000 points. It doesn't matter. You're going to see a lot more what this ASU team is going to look like as the season unfolds against teams that have a completely different playing style, completely different identity. So it's more important for Arizona State, but ultimately for where I expect both of these teams to be this year, this win or loss doesn't make or break either team in my mind.
So just a couple days away from the season opener. So, you know, as you see this team right now, this 2024 group of Dilly's Devils, what are your biggest questions about this group?
Will they follow Sam Leavitt? I mean, I think that he got all the number 1 reps in spring. He got all the number 1 reps in fall. When I flew out to help George Reister interview Kenny Dillingham, Marcus Arroyo, when I walked out of that room, Jaden Rashada was still enrolled. And my first thought was like, oh, Sam's their guy. And I turned to George, and he was like, oh, no doubt about it. Even the way Arroyo talked about it, you know, we did a lot of our due diligence on this guy, Sam Leavitt. And then you got these other 2 guys who were in-house, and, you know, who really knows what they're about? Well, here's the deal. You work for somebody who spent an entire year with them the last year. If you wanted to do that level of due diligence on all 3 players involved, you absolutely could have. But I think they zeroed in on this kid. I think there's something about him. You know, who knows? This is the first offer for Sam Leavitt came from Kenny Dillingham while he was at Florida State. While Sam Leavitt was at Wesleyan in Oregon. So, you know, this is somebody that Kenny Dillingham's had his eye on for a really long time. And I talked to Marcus Arroyo about his relationship with Justin Herbert, and he really does zero in on a guy. He really does, and he wants to get inside their head, find out what makes him tick, and help maximize, you know, not just as a player, but as a person. He really likes to get inside their head. I think he's kind of imprinted on this kid, and to have somebody get all the first-team reps for the most part in spring and fall. How long has it been since that happened? I think that this is going to be a very, very interesting interesting run as an ASU fan where you might have the opportunity for a multi-year starter here. But from everything that he's talked to you about, saying that his leadership style is a little bit harsh, Kenny Dillingham talked about him yelling at players and stuff, and I just think about how much younger he is than everybody else and how great he wants to be. My biggest question mark is if the chips are down, if things get ugly, and he's having to get on people the way Rudy used to, the way Manny Wilkins used to when it was necessary, how are they going to respond to that? Other than that, I think it's a much more talented offense than they had last year, and I'm excited to see what they do defensively in the Big 12. I don't count on them being as good as they were last year. In spurts, obviously, the 3 out of the last 4 weeks of the season last year were pretty brutal. But I do think that getting Xavier Alford back out on the football field is going to give this team an emotional leader. I think that Cole Martin is special. And if you can find a way to get the ball in his hands, whether it's in the return game or if he picks off a pass, he's going to give you some moments that turn into gifts that live in the comment section of the internet for a really long time. So I'm excited about this defense. I'm confident in this offense, and I think we're going bowling.
Yes, that kind of leads into my next question. Kind of on the flip side of the areas where you have questions, where are you feeling good? Where are you feeling confident on the eve of the season?
Running back. I know Raleek Brown's not ready. I know Kyson Brown is maybe a year away from being what they need him to be. But between Cam Scadaboo, we'll see how the new physique works out. And fingers crossed, healthy DeCarlos Brooks. That's a hell of a 1-2 punch going into the Big 12. And healthy, I'd put that grouping up against anybody. I want to see them establish the run the way that Marcus Arroyo did as offensive coordinator at Oregon. It's a shared experience that Kenny Dillingham has with him. They've made Sam Leavitt, Bo Nix comparisons, and one of the things that made Bo Nix work is he had the cleanest jersey in the world. He got touched twice 2 years ago. Twice. And everyone brings up air yards and stuff like that. If you have playmakers, give them the ball. If that's what Arizona State's offense is going to resemble, if not in skill, then in form, then I'm really, really excited to see what some of these running backs can do, especially catching, some passes out of the backfield or just in a regular rotation. This is the most excited I've been about running backs since the, Balaj Richard duo. So I'm pumped.
So what are some of the most significant adjustments you think that Kenny Dillingham needs to make from year 1 to year 2 for ASU to get to that level that you think that they can get to this year?
Man, that's a great question because I'm sure he learned so much. Any first-year coach does. It's just going to be really picking out what it is that is the most necessary lesson. He has a good staff. He's going to have to lean on them. It was interesting of him to abdicate the role of offensive coordinator to Bo Baldwin last year, only to take it back. To bring in somebody with as strong of a personality as Marcus Arroyo, I don't think you're going to be able to do that same type of deal. I don't think you're going to be able to kind of change up on your staff when, if you're frustrated in the middle of the season. And, and if that does come to fruition, I would hope that it wouldn't, but if it does come to fruition, then I think you probably got to look yourself in the mirror and say, they brought me here because I'm offensively innovative, and maybe I don't want to go out there and be a Lincoln Riley because I think the defense will falter and some details will fall through the cracks. I want to be a Frank Kush. I want to be a Todd Graham. I want to be a real true head coach type. Maybe that's not going to work, but other than that, I think, it's going to be how he adjusts on the fly when there's actual expectations. If they go out and beat Wyoming, and they have a legitimate shot to beat Mississippi State. Mississippi State was not good last year at all. Jeff Lebby is as new to this as Kenny Dillingham is, if not newer. They have an opportunity to go into conference play 3-0. And if they don't, they don't. But they, how do you handle success? How do you adjust to expectations? Those are all the things that I'm interested to see, because everybody gave Kenny Dillingham the benefit of the doubt last year that he was working with some type of handicap. And this year, I think that benefit of the doubt really goes away. And people really just want to be excited again. The last 5 quarterbacks that have left Arizona State did so with eligibility remaining. Arizona State wants to rally behind a quarterback, no matter who it is, and they want to ride that season out with them if they can. And so, I would just hope that, 4 weeks in, maybe look at what's going on, make the best judgment for the team, and move forward. If Arroyo's killing it, then give him even more responsibility. If Sam Leavitt is, 7 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 3-1, then hey, like, this is your gig for as long as you want. Just don't even be looking over your shoulder, right? But if it's a situation where like it was last year, where you had some doubts about Rashada, even though you gave him the keys to the kingdom, and then a high school injury comes up, and yada yada yada, or the Emory Jones situation, which I know was pre-Dillingham. If you can, the best thing to do is to be in a situation where you have confidence in your guy, and he's not hurt, he's not running for his life all the time. Otherwise, just do the thing that we've done the last 2 years, turn the keys over to the one guy who's thrown for over 300 yards 5 times in the last 2 seasons, because I think that could give you your best chance to win this year. But really, it's Kenny Dillingham's team. I'm not that worried about it. He's still very young, but at the same time, he's surrounded with so many good people, especially on the offensive side of the ball. This staff is, man, they're just I'm sure you know some of them. I'm sure you guys know some of them. I'll put them up against anybody as human beings, and I think that when you have that many good people around you that are stable, calming influences that have all experienced success at very high levels, I think the sky's the limit. So I'm not too worried about him. I would just hope that he's ready to be playing with expectations on him, whereas last year it was whatever happens.
And one of those all-time guys, Sean Aguano, was chatting me up about my workout routine when we were waiting in line for food at the football kickoff luncheon on Friday. So you know what? Hey, I'll take all the ego's getting stroked lately, so we're good here. So, but let's talk a little bit about Dillingham's boss. Give us your feedback, your input on first-year athletic director Graham Rossini and the things that he's done here in these first 90 or so days that he's been on the job.
No, I will not be giving you anything because he listens. I don't. Yeah, the more that I hear from him, the more it's evident that he hears us. So I'm shutting my mouth because I don't want to come up with some dumb idea on the fly that he tries to put into place just because he's sensitive to the fan base's needs. I'm going to keep my mouth shut on him. He seems like he knows what he's doing. I used to yell from the mountaintops about his predecessor because I was pretty sure he couldn't hear me anyway. I don't have the guts. I don't have the intestinal fortitude to stand here. And he seems very competent to me. There's nothing I could say that he probably hadn't thought of already. Some of this stuff that he's talking about, cutting parking fees, just putting in an effort. You guys ever remember effort?
Yeah.
At our live show, cool. He did like the quite a nice gesture. He got up there and sat up there on stage with us, and immediately bought the bar a round of drinks.
Yeah. Like I said, he seems like a really cool guy, but I don't have any suggestions because I'm afraid he'll actually. I'm like the dog chasing the car. Like I don't actually want to catch it. I want to give all my opinions about Arizona State with no consequence whatsoever because. They have experts doing the job anyway, and they don't need to hear from me. But I worry about this one because he seems like he's got his ear to the ground and he knows what people's concerns are. So I'm gonna let smarter people than me bring up their issues because they're getting addressed, and that's pretty cool.
All right, so looking ahead to this very crucial 2024 season for Sun Devil football, obviously, you kind of mentioned that last year was maybe a year zero, some caveats, maybe not. But heading into this year, you got a lot more depth, some more talent, really hard schedule, new conference. Ultimately, at the end of the day, what are some of the benchmarks you think that the Sun Devils need to hit to be able to kind of look back and say 24 was a step in the right direction?
Be good to have a quarterback throw for more than 10 touchdown passes. How long has it been since we did that? Was that 2019?
I mean, did Trent not get there in the year before last?
I don't remember.
It seems like it was a pre-COVID thing.
The team didn't get there last year collectively. Yeah. That's for
right.
Sure.
It seems like a pre-COVID thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So that would be cool to see double digits because otherwise you'd think we've been Air Force or something like that for the last 5 years. I don't know. Every benchmark I have for this team is really outside of this team. I want to see the fans come back. You guys have held this show down for the last 5 years without the audience that it deserves. You have a faithful, awesome audience. I'm among them, so I'm going to keep complimenting myself here. But it's been, and Joe, I know you're used to this in your personal life, but it's been a lot of heavy lifting. It's not been fun. And I just want to see the fun come back. I read an article that said 40,000 combined first-time students, whether as graduates, transfers, online or in person, are becoming Sun Devils. Sun Devils for the very first time
for the football team, I think.
Right. But 40,000 this year, and I just want those 40,000 people to have fun. And I want the million alumni out there to have fun. And I want the 16,000 that live in Joe's other home sweet home, Texas, to have fun when Arizona State comes out there. I want Arizona State football to be fun again. And that's really all I care about. And I do think that it's coming. It's just the last 5 years, the only fun that has been had is when we get together. It really hasn't been the product on the field or the ancillary stories that have been going on behind the scenes. It's been pretty miserable, and I'm looking forward to Arizona State football being fun again.
So maybe the real 2024 Sun Devil season is the friends we made
along the way. Yeah. No, not anymore. No, that was the last 5 years. We want winning. That's what we want.
So ASU has a chance to start that winning this Saturday. I don't know if you want to give a score or a prediction or just general statements, but how do you see Saturday's ball game playing out?
Well, George Reister talked me into 17-10. So let's roll with it. Arizona State 17, Wyoming 10. You only have to worry about John Hoyland once, unless it's 2 field goals and 2 safeties. And given that it's Wyoming football, that is fully possible. But I will be there. I'm flying out. I'm hoping to see you guys.
Be around.
And so I have a segment in the Forecast show that I just launched. And it's not sign stealing. It's not Connor Stallions, but it's sign suggestions. And I love wholesome signs. I love them. A little bit witty, a little bit wholesome. I used to go to Arizona State games. I remember San Diego State is full of beaches, or San Jose is not a state. I learned that at ASU. There were a couple that I can't repeat that involved the Oregon Ducks, but I was a big sign guy. And that's kind of been a lost art. So I have some sign suggestions.
And as a lifelong professional wrestling fan, this is right up my alley, because back in the good old days of the 90s and early 2000s, you go into an arena at Monday Night Raw or something like that, brother. Nothing but signs. So I'm in. You got my attention.
Might have to try to see you get a little sneak peek here. All right. So what do you got?
All right. So I want you to rate my signs. Here we go. This is my first sign suggestion. We got roses are red, X Valide is blue, that he didn't leave Laramie for Tempe until 2022.
I like it. Thumbs up. I don't know what rating system we're using, but it's a positive one.
Okay, let's see. Some more sign suggestions. Here we go. This is a rough one, dude.
Oh man.
So
a burn.
That one maybe should have been last. That's not actually very nice.
That's the main event right there.
Yeah. Okay. So to explain,
a Toby Keith boot in your tail end saying that in Laramie, I'm sure.
I'm sure. So for the real country fans out there, amongst them, I think Joe Healy, you could count yourself. Chris Ledoux is the man
because he's a cowboy.
Like a real one,
a legit cowboy. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean he's Wyoming's favorite son. He tragically about 20 years ago lost his life in Casper, Wyoming. I was actually in negotiations to bring him to my hometown for a charity show when he passed away. I'm a big fan of his as well. He's got a bar named after him in my hometown, a whiskey named after him. But this is true. This is actually true. And if you were to hold this sign up, and the players probably wouldn't know what the hell you're talking about.
Right.
But there would be some fans that are so angry. Like legitimately angry. So Chris Ledoux is from Mississippi. Do that at your own risk. Like I said,
they'll probably be like maybe like Pat Tillman slander around Tempe. Or something.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we're talking about a prestigious individual, I'm sure, in Wyoming.
Okay, this one's for you, Brad.
Yeah.
This is for any incomplete passes and or missed kicks if John Hoyland is having an off day.
All right.
Dick Cheney has better aim than that. People don't know this, but our former vice president, longtime Wyoming resident, once shot a man in the face. So,
yeah, I'm tweeting some of these out live.
this one Joe already brought up, and so I feel like you stole my sign. Helevation is greater than elevation. I like this one. I think it's cute.
You got to bring some of these to like game day. Stand next to Old Crimson.
Yeah. I wonder. No, game day. I thought game day was going to be out for the Clemson Georgia game, but they made that mistake 2 years ago. I actually did go to college game day. All right, and then I alluded to this one. If you want to get on a Wyoming fans' nerves, if you want to get on a Wyoming players' nerves, you want to say something that is harsh but true. Fort Collins is better.
All right, we might have to feed these.
I've been to Fort Collins. I mean, it's great.
Pretty great, man.
We just had our guy Ben Coleman on, man. We should like feed him some of these for some trash talk with the line. Be like, man, I heard Chris Ledoux's from Mississippi. Offsides.
You know what? Actually, there might be a couple of those Wyoming D linemen who are Ledoux fans, and you've seen their photos.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, exercise caution. But I figure they're most of them are harmless. Good fun. But the Fort Collins one thing that bother the players as well. And you know, we understand how offended people from Tucson get when we bring up the difference between Tempe and Tucson. Mm-hmm. A little bit of a sore spot for the fine people of Laramie, Wyoming as well.
Well, Ralph, it's always an adventure getting you on, and of course, it's when a game reaches the magnitude that you're flying cross country for, it's big. So we really appreciate your time, your insight, your expertise. And the signs. Looking forward to seeing
arts and crafts is a new, in season 14. Arts and crafts is a new thing to enter into the fold.
Yeah. I got a literature degree from Arizona State, so I better show that I can spell and read every once in a while.
So for any fans who are out there that may be new to the program, new to the wonders that are Ralph, they are multitude. How can they follow along with you on social media and all the various other things that you are doing, including the forecast?
Yeah, so it's going to be a fun year. I usually come on here and then we get to the end and I try to avoid plugging my stuff as much as possible. But this year I'm actually proud of the fact that I've become a little bit of an adult and organized my schedule in a way that's going to allow for a lot of fun content. So I have the College Football Apostles podcast with George Reister, thanks to the Pac-12 folding. Now I have to know the amount that I knew about 12 teams, about 130 teams. And I've been hating life lately, but I feel very big-brained. I know a lot about Vanderbilt quarterback Nate Johnson, and I don't think anybody needs to know about Vanderbilt quarterback Nate Johnson. So College Football Apostles with George Reister comes out every Thursday. I host Sun Devil Spaces. It's fun to have you in there every once in a while. Brad, Joe, if you're ever bored on a Wednesday and you want to listen to Kyle Dodd wax poetic about what it's like to want to make friends with other Sun Devil fans as an adult, which I agree with him on all of these things, by the way. Or you want to hear Kyle Murphy talk about the good old days, or you want to hear Demario Richards get on there and tell some stories of the Todd Graham era. It'd be fun to have you on there as well. We got the forecast. That's part of the 10-12 network. It's a network of Big 12 podcasts. I look forward to being part of that. And then I'll write some stuff for Sports 360 AZ every once in a while. If you care about high school football, I'm on Arizona Varsity with Chili, and that's a whole lot of fun as well.
All right, so I'm almost certain that this is not going to be the last time we get you on this season, because we got to. Yeah, I agree. Season 14 needs the arts and crafts segment. Sinology with Ralph.
And Arizona State.
Now.
I would go full Woody Page.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean. It shouldn't be, because based on what we said earlier, Wyoming and Arizona State are both going to the college football playoff, right? So, That's why this
There you go.
17-10 score is important. It's not going to make the committee think that Wyoming, can't overcome a 7-point deficit, and Arizona State's going to be undefeated by that time. So I would hope that you would have me back once these two meet sometime in December, January.
This is on par with Jordan Simone's hype speech prior to a couple seasons ago. I like it.
All right, Ralph. Yeah, we'll definitely catch up soon, and looking forward to seeing you here in Tempe for Saturday's opener.
Right on. Love you guys. And this is just a fact. It's just a fact. Nothing more.
Don't hate us all the state of Wyoming. We come in peace. All right, Brad, it's time to shake off the rust. Do a little something we haven't done since around Thanksgiving of last year. Time has passed. A lot's gone on. Sun Devil fans are surely ready to rid themselves of the memories of the end of last college football season, turn the page to 2024, hopefully get things kick-started in the right direction. Really intriguing matchup Saturday at Mountain America Stadium with the Wyoming Cowboys. This has been a very successful program for the last 10 years or so, but they're facing quite a bit of change this year. Could be ripe for the picking, but obviously a lot of question marks with ASU as well. So just, again, very, very intriguing matchup, different from what we've seen in most years where you begin with an FCS opponent and can't really take too much from it. There's going to be a lot to prove here on Saturday for ASU. This series history, there is some history there, kind of unique. So ASU's got a 9-6 edge. They've played 15 times, but they haven't met since 1977. And for a lot of you longtime Sun Devil fans, that year would be significant because it was the last year that ASU was in the Western Athletic Conference, in the WAC. They were in the WAC with the Wyoming Cowboys. They played every single year from 1965 to 1977. The first meeting came in 1951. And the last time Wyoming beat ASU in Tempe was in October of 1967. So a lot between these two teams, especially in the 60s and 70s. Last year, 2023, Wyoming, a very good year, 9-3 record. They capitalized at home. They were 7-0 in Laramie, but 1-4 in true road games. They were also 4-1 in one-score games. So this is just a team that found ways to win, that took advantage of its environment when playing at home. Didn't make too many costly mistakes that were earth-shattering things for games. So, again, a 9-win season for Wyoming in 2023 is something that's pretty substantial there. Now then, the engineer of that 9-4 record, of course, Craig Bull, he retired after 10 years at Wyoming and over 40 years in coaching. So this is a year of transition for the Cowboys. In his place, Jay Sawvell, who was his defensive coordinator from 2020 to 2023, he's going to make his head coaching debut this Saturday in Tempe, Brad. Yeah,
and it's one of those programs that I think has a nice established identity because, as you heard Ralph talk about, for a while there, it was a bowl was kind of, a real huge accomplishment. But now it's the baseline expectation. So, and I think, making the internal promotion is going to be big for this program to, try to continue that legacy, that consistency, and keep the factory turning.
Yeah, that consistency at Wyoming is something significant that bowl built there. The Cowboys have played in 3 consecutive bowl games and 4 in the last 5 years, with the only absence being that 2020 COVID season. So this is a very different program, at least what's been going on the last decade or so. But there is uncertainty, and that uncertainty showed itself in the preseason polls in the Mountain West Conference when Wyoming was picked 6th among the 12 teams in that league. Now, there are some talented teams in the Mountain West, so finishing middle of the pack is not necessarily, a curse that they're going to have a losing season, but it shows to me that a lot of folks, even ones closely involved there within the conference, aren't really sure how to peg this Wyoming team. So if we're looking at the roster, starting with the offense, a lot of personnel turnover from a year ago. Starting at quarterback, 2-year starting QB, Andrew Peasley, he's gone. He was an honorable mention all-conference pick last year. Standing in his place, getting the nod, as you heard about, Mesa Red Mountain High graduate Evan Svoboda. He is QB1. This will be his second career collegiate start coming up on Saturday. Last season, he completed 23 of 38 passes for 200 yards on the year, 1 interception, 80 net rush yards, 2 scores. A great deal of his action came in a very close loss to Texas. He completed 17 of 28 passes in that game for 136 yards and an interception. You heard the breakdown about him from Ralph Amsden. He's someone that, again, has the physical makeup of things, not a ton of experience at the college level, but he is coming home, and we've certainly seen more than one guy stick it to the hometown team when they play in Tempe.
It's going to be real interesting to see this Wyoming offensive attack because that identity is so ingrained there, but with a new OC in Jay Johnson, we might see some more spread elements. I mean, that could see a little bit more, deviation from what the kind of the standard template that has led to some of this, maybe boring but successful offensive brand of football for the Cowboys over the years. But yeah, Svoboda is got some good tools. Certainly a live arm, a guy who can make some plays with his feet if necessary. But with that limited experience, what I'm really looking forward to seeing is what is Brian Ward going to do to a quarterback who just has that one start under his belt. And granted, it was in a hostile atmosphere against a very good team, and took the Longhorns to the brink there. But we've seen what Brian Ward is able to do. He's got a relatively healthy defense, guys chomping at the bit. So I think that chess match there between Johnson and Ward is going to be real interesting to watch.
And Wyoming suffered a significant blow weeks ago when it was announced that honorable mention All Mountain West Conference running back Harrison Whaley would miss at least this game due to injury. He had over 1,000 all-purpose yards last year. At running back, at least on the depth chart for the game, the top running back is going to be North Carolina transfer DJ Jones. He had 442 rushing yards from 2020 to 2023 for the Tar Heels, but he moved to defense and played a defensive back last season before transferring to Wyoming. Sam Scott's the backup running back. He had 241 rushing yards last year, which technically makes him the team's leading returning rusher from a year ago. A lot of departures at wide receiver. Their top returning wide receiver statistically is Alex Brown, who had 8 catches for 106 yards in 2023, and he should be starting on Saturday. Devin Buddy Jr., he's listed as another starter. He has 38 career receptions, which is the most among any Wyoming wide receivers on the roster. But 29 of those catches came in 2021 when he played for Vanderbilt. He had just 5 catches for 42 yards last year with Wyoming. And again, he's the only wide receiver on the roster with more than 20 career receptions. The third starter at receiver is figuring to be Jalen Sargent. He had just 1 catch last year. So we'll talk about the tight ends in the moment because there certainly is some talent there. But at wide receiver for a new quarterback, and if you have to go to some of your backups at running back, that makes it difficult for a really green quarterback, at least from in terms of starting experience, like you have in Svoboda.
Yeah, but I do think that kind of the game plan is going to be the same with that running back by committee instead of maybe perhaps Harrison Whaley getting the bulk there. But DJ Jones, is going to be leaned upon, and they got a really good offensive line, 4 returning starters, some veteran guys in that group. So, they'll be, having a stern test against ASU's front 6, but having the depleted backfield loop minus their star. And, I do think that, some of the reports are that Jalen Sargent's had a pretty impressive fall camp, but nobody really right there that just necessarily screams, game breaker. So, we've talked about the questions that ASU has at cornerback. Perhaps this is a nice way to kind of get them eased into the season, not necessarily be thrown up against like maybe some of the USC lineups that they've had to face the last couple of years. So at tight end, even though Wyoming loses, honorable mention All Mountain West Conference performer Trayton Welch, they return John Michael Gillenborg. He's the team's leading returning receiver from last year, 23 catches for 370 yards and 3 touchdowns. So you would imagine he is going to be targeted a lot on Saturday. As Brad mentioned, Wyoming returns 4 offensive line starters. However, the one that they lose is the best from last year. First team all-conference left tackle Frank Crum. So as Ralph discussed, there are some experienced players, maybe not the high-end, accolade earners, but ones that have played together quite a bit, and they know their place within this offense. Yeah, I think it's going to be one of the true keys of this game is going to be getting them off the field and winning those third down battles, because this is an offense that wants to win and grind you down, win that clock battle, win the time of possession, keep their defense off the field, and in turn keep ASU's bevy of playmakers off the field.
So if we're looking at the offense, summarizing things, they've got a seasoned offensive line for the most part, a capable tight end, but I mean, just to me, there's a significant lack of proven playmakers at quarterback, running back, and wide receiver in terms of the guys that are going to be available for this game. So, I mean, other than the tight end, I don't see the weapons. Obviously, you can surprise people. Obviously, you can have guys that, as you mentioned, had breakout fall camp, and maybe they're in line to do things that they've never done before at the college level. But there just isn't anything on paper as far as proven commodities at the college level that you could really point to on this offense outside of the tight end that really concern you if you're ASU.
Yeah, I think, Brian, again, it's going to be an interesting chess match to see Brian Ward bring in all kinds of stuff. We've seen him get creative all last year throughout camp. He's got added some weapons to that arsenal, and even though you're down a Prince Dorbah, you still have Elijah O'Neal and Clayton Smith attacking off the edges. We've seen some creative stuff in the secondary at the linebacker level, as well as, I think, improved talent in the middle of this Sun Devil defensive line. CJ Fight, Jake McGuica, Jeff Clark in that group as well. How are those guys going to hold up against a team that's really going to look to ground and pound behind that veteran offensive line?
So if we flip over to the Wyoming defense, they did suffer a big loss in first-team All-Mountain West Conference linebacker and leading tackler Easton Gibbs, but they returned 6 of their top 7 tacklers from a year ago. Linebacker Shea Suiona, he had 93 tackles in 2023. Wyatt Eckler, he had 77 tackles. He's a stat-stuffing kind of defensive back. Rook Brown's 47 tackles, 3 picks in the secondary. Sebastian Harsh had a team-high 9 TFLs last year, 50 total tackles. Jordan Bertinoli, 57 tackles, including 5 for loss from his defensive line position. We heard Ralph talk about that. So they've got some very active players at all levels. Again, maybe not the household names, maybe not the All-Americans, but guys that have played quite a bit of ball, fit in that system, know how to win, aren't afraid to go into any environment and play. So this defense, this ASU offense versus Wyoming defense, I think is going to be the difference maker in this game in determining who wins and who loses.
Yeah, new DC and Aaron Bowl, and obviously similar, same last name as coach's son. They run a base 4-2-5, a lot of similarities to what ASU does as well. But you mentioned that you have some very active guys, especially that secondary, I think is the strength of that defense. Some very veteran guys, some very productive guys as well. One area that I am a little bit concerned about is they got a nice defensive end tandem. You mentioned Sebastian Harsh, Braden Siders in that group as well. We have the questions all camp long, all off season long about ASU and the offensive tackles. I think if this is a one area where perhaps the Wyoming defense, being a veteran group as they are, can keep things close and get this game, drag it into the muck and get it to close late into the fourth quarter. I think that could be one area if they're just the Cowboys attacking off the edge.
Yeah, and we heard about it. We'll mention it. The special teams, John Hoyland, the kicker for Wyoming, had a rough year last year, especially from long distance. If my numbers are correct, I believe he was like 3 of 10 from beyond 39. But he had a 56-yarder. So this guy's just got a cannon for a leg, and he's had some accolades. So in what could be just a dirty game out there, in terms of it not being pretty, the kickers could very well be a determining factor. And we know that ASU's got some new pieces out there as well. All right, so we've buzzed through the offense, buzzed through the defense, a little bit of special teams. Time to jump into our keys for this game before we give you our score predictions. Brad, what is your first key for this game?
ASU should get that pass game going. I think they're going to be dedicated and lean on the run, and I think they'll have success there. But Sam Levitt's making his first career start. You got a lot of interesting weapons at wide receiver. Now, again, you're going against a veteran Wyoming secondary, but this team was abysmal through the air a season ago. We know why. All the quarterbacks got hurt. The entire offensive line got hurt. That's in the past, though. This is a team that if it's going to have success, going to make a run or make some noise in year one in the Big 12, they need to have some positive results through the air. So I'd love to see them, maybe get Sam Levitt in the groove early, some easy stuff, and then take those shots. We've all one of the reasons that he's won the job is all fall camp, all spring ball. Sam Levitt's a guy who's not afraid to push the ball downfield. He's got some weapons that can stretch the field. Let's see them in action.
And I'll stick with the offense for my first key, and really important just to avoid dumb mistakes on offense. Talking about unnecessary turnovers. Not that they're really necessary turnovers, but being smart with the football. Avoiding dumb penalties, things like that. Don't take the ball out of your own hands. Don't push yourselves back when you're making drives, especially in the early going when you want to get some momentum under first-year quarterback Sam Leavitt against a veteran defense against Wyoming that is likely going to, try to take some shots at him, try to get into the backfield. They've got playmakers at all levels, does the Wyoming defense. So if you're ASU, if you're Marcus Arroyo, if you're Kenny Dillingham, really want to hone in on assignment sound football, obviously the whole game, but especially in the early going so you can build up some momentum.
All right, key number 2 for me is get some turnovers finally and reverse that 2023 trend. ASU's defense was pretty good for 3/4 of last season. They obviously fell off in the last couple of games as kind of the gas tank ran dry, but for all the good things they did on defense, including holding the Huskies to without an offensive touchdown, by and large the turnovers just weren't there. Very atypical, and I think that was just something that's probably going to regress to the mean a little bit, or maybe ascend to the mean. I want to see them get after it. Obviously, you have a young quarterback making his second career start. You have an offense that's probably going to be looking to find its identity. I think this is going to be a good ASU defense, but they can't go long stretches without generating turnovers, without generating those game-changing plays. So get after it. Get a couple. Get a crooked number in that turnover column.
So I'll stick, with the ASU defense as well. For this, I just really like the matchup for ASU when the Devils are on defense. So you just want to be disciplined. Make them beat you. You don't have to be too terribly creative, I don't think. Because, again, the quarterback, running back, wide receiver, every skill player other than the starting tight end has not proven much of anything at this level, or at least not to a level that should highly concern you. That's not to say they're not talented players. It's not to say that they can't catch lightning in a bottle, but ASU doesn't have to have a PhD in defenseology, I don't think, to stop this Wyoming offense. With everything that we know and what's been proven at Arizona State or proven at other schools by some of the transfers, ASU should really be able to have success on defense. And I give a lot of credit to the Wyoming offensive line. But again, those skill players, starting with the quarterback, just at this particular point, don't really scare me. And we'll see what happens with that. But kind of leading into, your key as well, want to see ASU just be disciplined. And again, assignment sound. Turnovers are very, very important. Just don't chase those, at the risk of letting a play blow up on you. So keeping it simple should be effective in this game.
Key number 3 for me is to put it away before the 4th. Wyoming is a team that's extraordinarily good at just mucking up a game, making it ugly, getting you into an ugly rock fight. Texas was able to escape with a win in Austin a season ago, and obviously they made a playoff run, but it was 10-10 heading into that fourth quarter. This is not a place you want to be as a Power 4 team, be in a close game, a one-score game against the Cowboys, and no matter whether it's in Laramie or in your home stadium. So I'd love to see ASU be aggressive, build up a multi-score lead, really head into that final 15 with the game no longer truly in doubt.
The third one for me is playing smart, but play with the chip on your shoulder. I mean, you've got you got a whole bag of chips that should be on the shoulders for a variety of reasons, whether it's the 3 wins in the last 2 years, whether it's guys like Jake Smith, Xavier Alford that had to sit out last year, whether it's a guy like Ben Coleman that was injured last year, hasn't played in a couple seasons. You got a lot of different storylines as far as why these guys want to get back on the field, but this cannot be one of those, 10 penalty, 3 turnover games. If that's the case, it's going to be an L in the column for ASU. I think there are enough matchup advantages that the Sun Devils have to where they certainly should win this game. They're favored to win this game, but you want to see them again go out there with a lot of fire, a lot of intensity and enthusiasm, but at least reined in enough, especially at starting quarterback for Leavitt, who may very well be through the roof in terms of his energy to get this thing started. He's got to keep it under control, keep it composed.
All right, time for our predictions, how we see it playing out. I'll start things up. I think this is an ASU team that is chomping at the bit. The energy in practice, especially lately, is moving in the right direction. It is ascending. They are ready to go. They are definitely ready to be hitting people that aren't their teammates. And I know Kenny and Marcus Arroyo are going to be wanting to get this thing off to a fast start. They want to kind of put 2023 fully in the rear view mirror and make this season its own thing. So I do think though that maybe out of the gates a little bit, that aggressiveness won't necessarily pay off. There might be, because it is a good defense for the Cowboys, but I think perhaps late first quarter, second quarter, some of those shots, some of those things are going to start to connect, and ASU is going to go into the half with a nice lead. I think they extend that in the third quarter, and I think that they do. They better avoid that fourth quarter rock fight. I think there's going to be a situation where ASU's strength up front in the trenches is going to wear down that front of the Wyoming defense. I see a big game for ASU on the ground. I see some big-time plays, maybe 3 or 4 big-time shots through the air. And overall, I think it's going to be a comfortable win when all is said and done. I think the spread's like 6.5 or 7. I think ASU definitely covers that. Actually, I'm going to take them 31-14.
So for me, I don't think it's going to be ugly, but I don't think it's going to be pretty. I think it's just going to be like a straight up opening night game where there's flair and fireworks. There are mistakes, not necessarily catastrophic ones, but just aggravating ones. You still have a guy who's making his first career collegiate start. You still have a lot of moving pieces in terms of new players that are brought into the fold. Those sort of things take a little bit of time to gel. This is kind of rarefied air. This is probably, I'm just going off memory, probably the best opening game. If you take away like USC from the COVID season, it's probably the best opening game opponent ASU's had since A&M in 15. Just off the top of my head, you know what I mean? Like, not really doing a lot of research in that, but it's a very good opponent.
Mostly tune-up games before.
Yeah,
since
it's
then.
usually an FCS program or maybe a lower tier G5 opponent or something like that. So this is something that, but I think it's a very good thing. We've talked about a lot how this schedule is something that is very competitive from A to Z. So I'm going to see some highs, I'm going to see some lows, but you're going to see ASU withstand the storm. I think that they will cover the spread only slightly. However, I think it's going to be more of a nail biter than Brad predicts, though I'd certainly like his outcome more. I'm calling a 24-17 Sun Devil victory.
All right, so we'll see if the Devils can get that opening night W and set up a nice little clash in the following week when an SEC team trots into Tempe. But before we close things out, a couple of good conversations with some Sun Devils on the offensive side of the ball, some youngsters that are looking forward to their really kind of first big taste of major college football. You'll be hearing from wide receiver Derek Eusebio and tight end Jayden Fortier. Just a couple days away from the season opener. What kind of the emotions now? It's kind of getting real and getting close.
Oh yeah, we're excited. The whole team's excited. We're just excited to play a game as a team for the first time. We all practices last spring ball, summer, winter workouts, all this. We don't really know what we got, but we'll find out on Saturday for sure. So it's exciting.
How good is it just to be going up against another team, not just be battling your teammates every day?
Oh no, it feels amazing, and like we've been going against each other since spring. So I mean, it's nice to see someone else for sure.
What do you feel have been kind of some of the keys to your strong performance in spring and fall camp over? Obviously this has been a tremendous offseason for you, and obviously in line for some serious playing time.
Oh yeah, it's just consistency. Really, Coach Ward's been really hard on us, just getting our playbook and everything. So just being consistent for sure, and just showing up every day. And that's mainly the reason these coaches put us in the position to succeed. So, and really just the play calls, knowing your plays, knowing everything, knowing where I want to be. That's the majority of it. I'm not the fastest, not the strongest. But I know where I'm going to be. So that plays a huge part for sure.
What's it been like just working with Coach Ward, a guy with the Super Bowl MVP on his mantle?
Oh, it's amazing. It's everything you can think of. It's what a receiver dreams of. He 2 Super Bowls, Super Bowl MVP. That's what you want to be for sure.
What are some of the things that kind of jump out about this Marcus Arroyo offense now that you guys have had plenty of practice time with it?
Just the way he could dress up, everything. We make a lot of plays look the same, but we're dressing up differently. So just the way he can schematically make that seem like that. So just if we know what we're doing, we'll be. It's just us. That's us against us for real.
Sam getting the QB1 spot and leading that offense. What are some of the things that kind of jump out about him as a leader? In the huddle, just kind of kind of orchestrating this Sun Devil attack.
Oh, he's a leader. Yeah, that's what you said. I first of all, I thought he was older. So, but it's kind of cool thing. I didn't know he was my age. I'm actually older than him. So it's cool just know that he's just as young as us, but he's a lot more mature than he is. So that's just a great thing to have as maturity as a quarterback for sure. And he plays older than he is for sure. Everyone makes mistakes, and I'm sure, but he's done a lot better since spring, and he owns up to it now and everything. So yeah, it's good for sure.
Who are some of the maybe younger receivers on this roster that really kind of caught your eye? Working with them in fall camp.
Oh, Zach for sure. Yeah, I mean he's fast. Speed, you can't teach speed for sure, but yeah, he's got a bright future for sure.
You're doing the prep on Wyoming's defense, pretty good secondary they have there. What are some of the things that jump out about what they like to do schematically that you guys are going to go up against?
They're just simple. I mean, playing vanilla, they won't beat themselves. I mean, it's pretty much what they do. They don't like to disguise much. They just play what they play, and they know what they're going to do too. They know where they're going to be just as much as we need to know where we're going to be. So, I mean, it's just going to be whoever does their job better for sure.
What are some of the goals that you want to accomplish? You know, what would make 2024 a successful year for you?
Really, just help my team any way I can. I mean, I didn't think I was going to be at this point right now in this part of the season. I mean, a lot of things are for sure unforeseen, and you don't know. Like last year was anything happened last year, so you never really know. I mean, I'm open to anything, so just anything to help my team for sure.
What do you feel are some of the emotions or thoughts, you know, when you're running out through Tillman Tunnel on Saturday night?
That's the best thing. I mean, I've only done it a couple times last year, but I wasn't going to play it for sure. So, but this year it'll be extremely more special just because I know I got the chance to be in there. So yeah, it'll be a dream come true for sure as a kid.
All right, so just a couple days away from first college game. When you're running out of Tillman Tunnel in a few days, what do you think the emotions and thoughts in your head are going to be?
I mean, I think it's really just going to be a childhood dream come true. I mean, this is really what I worked my entire life for, you know, being able to have this, you know, run out on the stage. Last year I was, you know, blessed with the opportunity to come out here, watch the USC game, sold out crowd, so I'm hoping that's, you know, the same atmosphere. And I mean, it's really, I'll probably shed a tear when I'm running out of that tunnel. It's just a lot of emotion, so I'm excited for it.
So obviously making your way back from the injury, you know, what has that process been like? You know, it seems like a lot of the major injuries, sometimes the mental recovery is almost as impactful as the physical recovery.
That's the first thing I was going to say. You know, it's been a challenge. Obviously, there's hard days, there's good days, but it's really just staying grounded. You know, I have a great support system here, you know, my family back home, so it's really been great. And, you know, the trainers here are obviously top tier, A1, so I've just been trusting them and listening to what they've been saying.
What's it been like just, you know, getting the support from the teammates, coach staff, you know, obviously the support staff as well, you know, in your recovery and also getting back out here on the field?
It's been amazing. I mean, from the training side, obviously, you know, they're with me every step of the way. I'm with them every day. And then, you know, coming out here on the football field, you know, the older dudes, they've really taken me under their wing, kind of shown me how things are supposed to go. Obviously, you know, everybody has college experience, Marqueson, Shaman, Hart, even Colson, St. John, they've been here. So, I mean, really just listening to them and asking them a bunch of questions that they answer. So they've been really helpful.
You know, now that you've been able to get back on the practice field, how good does it just feel just to, you know, be able to get back and play some football?
It feels amazing. I mean, you can see my smile right now. Just coming out here, you know, being able to compete every day with the guys, even if it's just individual drills, it means the world to me. I mean, I love the game. I love the hustle. I love the grind. So just getting out here every day, being able to run around, you know, I'm getting more comfortable every day. So I'm excited.
How are you feeling? How far along are you, you know, to get to 100%? You know, I know you're doing like some position work now, not yet necessarily in the team stuff as of yet.
I'm about 8 months right now, so I mean, it's really just a slow process now, making sure I hit all my numbers on my testing, and really, you know, the trainers have been doing a great job of listening to me and, you know, what my body's feeling, but also pushing me at the same time, you know, trying to get me to get out there, you know, really battle that mental side of it, so it's been good.
Working with Coach Amons, you know, it seems a really detail-oriented guy, real passionate guy. What's it been like just, you know, going through camp with him?
I mean, it's been amazing. You know, coming from high school, I played receiver my whole life, so, you know, really getting in here and learning core work and learning footwork. I got to do a lot of things over, that's for sure, but, I mean, every time, you know, he's being generous, and he's giving me his knowledge, obviously, so I'm just taking it with an open ear, and, I mean, all you can say is yes, sir. So just keep listening and keep getting better every day.
What are some of the biggest adjustments, you know, getting into camp and, you know, adjusting to the college, making that jump up from high school to major college football?
I mean, it's definitely been different. You know, you come from high school and you're the best player on your team wherever you go, but here, you know, you get out here and everybody was the best player. So it's really, you know, just being patient, waiting for your opportunities to come through. And I mean, just taking everything one day at a time.
Pacific Northwest guy here coming to ASU in the middle of summer. You know, what's that life in Tempe been like for you?
I mean, the first couple weeks were rough. I mean, the heat in June, it was beating down on me every day. But, you know, now that I'm acclimated to it and stuff like that, it's been really well. So really good. So I'm excited for it.
So when you're during your preparation for the Saturday's big game, Wyoming, what are some of the things that kind of jump out about that Cowboy defense?
I mean, they're a good team. They're physical, you know, not too complicated with how they do things, but very solid team. I mean, you don't get 9 wins, pushing double-digit wins for no reason. You know, they're very well coached. They have a new head coach this year, obviously, but, you know, I feel their scheme's going to stay the same. So we're excited to get after it. And, I mean, there's some big boys up there. They keep things very simple, but, you know, they fly around and they hit hard. So we're excited for it.
What are some of the things, you know, the older guys in that tight end room with you? What are some of the, you know, the guys that have been most helpful to you? And what are some of the kind of pieces of advice that you found have been most useful?
I mean, really, like, you know, Shaman and Marqueson, obviously they played high-level football. Shaman was in the college football playoff. You know, Marqueson on an undefeated Florida State team, you know, with multiple NFL players. So really just learning from them and, you know, how, like, what it looks like to be a professional. I mean, they come in here to work every day. You know, they watch film. I mean, they come out here, they go hard. Obviously, not a lot of error from them. So, I mean, really just listening to that, watching that and how they do things and just trying to mirror it myself.
You know, obviously still, you know, making your way back to full health. I mean, what are some of the goals that you have for this 2024 season for yourself?
I mean, for myself, obviously, you know, just getting on the field is probably my main goal. But as of right now, you know, being a little limited, just staying sharp, you know, keeping my mental reps up, staying in the playbook, obviously, just stuff like that. So.
And that's going to do it for this episode of Speak of the Devils. I'd like to thank our lengthy guest list: Ralph Amsden, Ben Coleman, Derek Eusebio, and Jayden Fortier. This week's game will kick off at 7:30, television on FS1. It's going to be great. Like, no more Pac-12 network.
It's not even a possibility. It doesn't exist. It's gone. And, you know, my heart goes out to the wonderful people that work there. You know, of course, like our good buddy Gus Farwell and many others. But, yeah, it is something that's good not to have to worry about.
So, yeah, definitely catch on national television if you're not able to be in the stands at Sun Devil Stadium, helping to activate the Valley. In the meantime, make sure you stay with us on the social media side of things. You can follow the show on Twitter at SOTD Podcast, Instagram at Speak of the Devils, subscribe on YouTube, follow on Facebook. Give me a follow on all things social at BDenny29.
And you can follow me at Joe Healy42. Huge shout out and thank you to our incredible sponsors. And starting next week, you'll hear a little bit more detailed information about what they have to offer. But to remind you of the wonderful people and organizations who support us, so we hope that you support them as well. Of course, Jones Auto Group, the original provider of vehicles via NIL partnership arrangements with Sun Devil student athletes. They have been doing that thing since NIL became a thing. So hit up our guy, Parker Jones, 602-881-8998. He wants to hear from you. He can take care of you, get you suited up with the best vehicle that he has to offer. The vehicle of your dreams is just one phone call or text message away. Again, that number is 602-881-8998. Huge thank you, of course, to DevilsDigest.com. We had Hode Rubino in studio last week. Incredible content pouring out there, and that's only going to ramp up as the season gets on and the school year gets on. So become a subscriber if you aren't already. Get to shopping at Cactus Sports at 514 South Mill Avenue. If you don't have new gear for the new year, you got to. You cannot be walking into the Big 12 with the Pac-12 clothing. Come on now. So get on down to Cactus Sports, do some pregame shopping, or, of course, shop online at cactussports.com. And a huge thank you, as always, to our food partners, Burrito Express. Had a great event I saw over the weekend with Sun Devil student athletes. You heard us talking about it last week. BE, man, they are engaged in the Sun Devil community like no others. Also, a huge shout out to Spaghetti Shack, of course, owned and operated by a former Sparky, the Sun Devil. They've got some new things going on you'll be hearing about from us in the future, but be sure to support them. And last, but of course not least, our very good friends, our original sponsor, Sun Devil Family Charities. Of course, our live show we did at 100 Mile Brewing a few weeks back supported them, but you can keep on giving to them. Check them out at sundevilfamily.org to find ways that you can support Sun Devil Family Charities.
And make sure to support the good folks at the good brand, homefieldapparel.com. Their amazing ASU collection continues to grow. Shirts, hats, the can't miss kickoff boxes with some exclusive merchandise there you can only get at homefieldapparel.com. And also be sure, once you're done supporting our amazing sponsors, drop us a 5-star review on the podcast platform of your choice. We'll greatly appreciate it. Joe and I will be back next week to actually recap a football game, hopefully a Sun Devil win, get to break down, plus a preview, the look ahead to Mississippi State coming to Tempe to tackle the Devils.